To the U.S. now, 2 executive orders have been signed by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. The outgoing mayor has made rooting out anti-Semitism a core focus of his administration. The city is, of course, home to the largest Jewish community outside of Israel. New York also has deep ties with Israel, rooted in decades of economic cooperation and social cooperation as well. Questions are being raised about what this relationship could look like when Democrat socialist Zoran Mamdani takes office in New York. So for more, let's go to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. He's at the State Department in Washington. So, Mike, Mayor Eric Adams has, during his tenure, set up the mayor's office to combat anti-Semitism. It's the first office of its kind in a major city across the United States. So talk us through these executive orders he signed at the end of his term, so to speak.
These executive orders, Benita, are meant to put Zoran Mamdani on the spot, essentially, because once you issue an executive order, it needs to be actively repealed in order for it not to have effect anymore. So Adams is setting the table for Mamdani. The 2 executive orders, one of them will disallow New York City from making any business or pension investments with any companies that discriminate against Israel. Now, keep in mind, there's already a state executive order that calls for the same thing, that was initially introduced and signed by Andrew Cuomo when he was governor, and Kathleen Hochul, the current governor, has kept that in effect. So it's already there at the state level, but Adams adding it at the city level as well. And then there's a second executive order that Adams introduced yesterday that would instruct the New York Police Department to revisit its patrol guide in terms of how it handles protests in front of places of worship. We saw that anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protest at Park East Synagogue in Manhattan a couple of weeks ago. By the way, there's a rally, a pro-Israel rally outside that synagogue coming up later tonight. But the Adams executive order would instruct the NYPD to figure out how to avoid such circumstances, whether protesters need to be kept back at a certain distance, how the police should make sure that people can enter those houses of worship safely. So it's not definitive. It's leaving it in the hands of the NYPD. But keep in mind, there's already a federal law on the books that does not allow protesters to obstruct the entryways into houses of worship. So some of those protesters would have run afoul of federal law in that protest that happened a couple of weeks ago. But again, these are setting the stages here for Mamdani, almost daring him to try to revoke those executive orders. Keep in mind, New York City right now has about $300 million or so tied up in investments from their pension systems in Israeli assets or Israeli companies or companies with ties to Israel. The current comptroller who oversees those pensions, Brad Lander, he's somewhat anti-Israel and doesn't allow investments in Israel bonds specifically. The incoming comptroller, Mark Levine, who's currently the Manhattan Borough president, much more pro-Israel. He says New York City will get back to investing to Israel bonds if he has his way. But now he's going to be joined by an anti-Israel mayor, just the opposite of what we've seen.
Well, to that exact point, many alarmed by the anti-Semitic incidents in New York in recent months throughout the war, in fact, and concerns, obviously, about how Zoran Mamdani may address such cases. His views, obviously, on Israel sparking much concern. What is the sentiment within the Jewish community in the United States as we speak?
I think it's quite telling the wide swath of Jewish organizations that are participating in this rally coming up tonight at Park East Synagogue. It's not just right-wing or centrist. We're seeing several left-wing organizations join in there as well, essentially saying, hey, we've got to draw a line somewhere. Even those that might be predisposed to more progressive, more liberal views on Israel, more critical of Israel policy, are saying, hey, if we essentially let this go, well, you know, we could very well be next in our own houses of worship, even on the more progressive liberal side. And so I think that sends a message in and of itself. I think the real fear is that Mamdani essentially justified that protest a few weeks ago by saying that the Park East Synagogue was hosting an event where there was encouragement of going to Israel and settling on land in Judea and Samaria. The real fear is, well, where do you draw that line? If a synagogue is going to send a mission to the Western Wall, do they deserve to be protested as well? There's no line that's been drawn, and right now Jews are trying to set that line rather than doing so on Mamdani's terms.
Senior U.S. correspondent Mike Wackenheim, live from Washington. Thank you as always.